The cold, sterile air in the animal shelter room seemed even more unwelcoming, filled only by the soft buzz of fluorescent lights and the steady ticking of a clock. For Dr. Sarah Hayes, the head veterinarian, it had been one of those days that gnawed at her spirit. She had faced countless difficult days, but this one had left her feeling especially hollow. The relentless flow of abandoned animals, many too sick or injured to have any hope, was a burden she carried heavily. With a weary sigh, Sarah washed her hands, bracing herself for the final task of the day. But as she turned, her gaze fell upon a forlorn figure in the corner, a frail, heavily pregnant dog named Bella. Bella had been discovered by a compassionate stranger, left to fend for herself in an alleyway. Her condition was critical: malnourished, dehydrated, and weak. She could barely hold herself up. The burden of her pregnancy only deepened the gravity of her plight. With the shelter already at capacity and resources stretched thin, the outlook for Bella was bleak. As Sarah approached, a tear slipped down her cheek, one she quickly brushed away. Bella lay motionless in her cage, her large, sorrowful eyes locked onto Sarah's as if pleading for mercy. Those deep brown eyes held a profound sadness, almost as if Bella understood her fate lay in the balance. And in that moment, Sarah's heart ached for the fragile life before her, whispering a silent promise to give Bella every last bit of compassion she had left. Bella let out a faint, heartbreaking whimper, her swollen belly rising and falling with every strained breath. She was in undeniable agony, her frail body betraying her in countless ways. Dr. Sarah Hayes had exhausted every possible option: medication, fluids, constant care, but Bella's health only worsened. With each passing hour, it became clearer that her suffering outweighed any hope. The shelter's leadership had reached a painful decision. It was time to let Bella go gently, free her from the relentless pain. Sarah knelt beside Bella, gently stroking her head, her fingers trembling as they brushed over the dog's thin fur. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart," she murmured, her voice barely steady. Bella's eyes met Sarah's, and in that instant, an unspoken connection surged between them. It was as though Bella was pleading, yearning for just a little more time, a chance to bring her unborn puppies into the world. But Sarah was acutely aware of the reality. Bella was too fragile, too worn. The odds of her surviving the birth were heartbreakingly slim. Taking a deep breath, Sarah readied the syringe, the euthanasia solution shimmering under the stark lights. Her hands quivered as she brought the needle closer to Bella, the weight of the decision bearing down on her. But suddenly, just as the needle approached, Bella released a sudden, piercing cry, a sound filled not only with pain, but with a desperate, primal will to live. It was a cry that transcended words, a sound of life refusing to surrender, a spark fighting against the overwhelming odds. Dr. Sarah froze, her pulse quickening as she registered the sudden change in Bella's breathing. Her chest rose and fell in rhythm, her abdomen contracting in steady waves. Sarah's eyes widened, disbelief washing over her. "No, it can't be," she whispered, but the signs were unmistakable. Bella wasn't just sick, she was going into labor. "Hold on, sweetheart," Sarah murmured, abandoning the syringe on the tray. Her mind raced, and she instinctively reached for her stethoscope, pressing it gently to Bella's frail belly. Amid the sound of Bella's labored breaths, Sarah caught the unmistakable rhythm of tiny heartbeats. The puppies were alive. A surge of urgency and hope swept through her as her years of training took over. Without hesitation, Sarah called out for her assistant, Lucy, who had just finished cleaning up in the surgery room. Within seconds, Lucy was at her side, her face mirroring Sarah's concern and focus. "She's in labor," Sarah said, her voice tight with tension. "We have to help her. Get the oxygen tank and warm blankets, quickly. This is going to be touch and go." Lucy nodded, disappearing down the hall as Sarah stayed with Bella, her hand resting on the dog's heaving side, silently willing her to hold on. Bella's contractions grew stronger and faster, her soft whimpers intensifying with the strain of her effort. The frail mother's body was exhausted, on the verge of collapse, yet her eyes shone with a fierce determination. She would not give up. Bella's resolve, her quiet courage, only fueled Sarah's own. In that room, under the harsh lights and against all odds, they both braced themselves for the battle to bring new life into the world. Sarah's heart raced as the first puppy began to crown. Steeling herself, she guided Bella with steady hands, though her mind spun with worry. Could Bella endure this? Could the puppies survive, considering how starved and weakened their mother had been? Yet as the first puppy emerged, a tiny wriggling bundle of life, hope surged through her. With practiced speed, Sarah cleared the puppy's airway, wrapped it gently in a warm blanket, and placed it near Bella's head. Despite her exhaustion, Bella leaned down, nudging the puppy with a tender touch, her eyes soft and full of love. The sight melted Sarah's heart. One by one, the puppies arrived, each as delicate and vulnerable as the last. Sarah worked tirelessly, her hands moving with determined precision, her focus unwavering as she ensured each puppy was safe. Time blurred as the hours passed, sweat beading on Sarah's brow as she fought to keep Bella and her newborns alive. Bella's strength waned, her breaths growing shallow, her body trembling under the strain. And then, finally, the sixth puppy made its entrance. Bella let out a long, shuddering breath, her body sinking into the blanket. For a moment, fear gripped Sarah's heart, fearing that this might be the end. But then, as if drawing strength from the presence of her newborns, Bella lifted her head just enough to gaze at the tiny lives nestled beside her. A faint, contented whine escaped her, and she laid her head down, eyes half closed but at peace. "She did it," Lucy whispered, her voice choked with emotion, tears streaming down her face as the puppies nuzzled their mother, feeding for the very first time. Sarah nodded, her own eyes misty with tears. She did. Even as relief began to wash over her, Dr. Sarah Hayes knew they were far from safe. Bella had managed to bring her puppies into the world, but her own body remained perilously weak. The hours ahead would be crucial. If Bella couldn't regain her strength, she wouldn't be able to nurse or care for her newborns, and they were far too vulnerable to survive without her. Determined, Sarah and her assistant Lucy stayed by Bella's side, never once leaving her alone. They provided fluids, carefully administered nutrients, and kept oxygen flowing to help Bella's fragile body recover. While the puppies seemed robust, feeding eagerly and curling against their mother's warmth, Bella herself lingered on the edge, her life hanging in the balance. As the hours dragged on, exhaustion threatened to overwhelm Sarah, yet she remained resolute, unwilling to leave Bella's side. She had made a silent vow to this dog, to her pups, to fight for their survival, to honor Bella's own fierce will to live. It wasn't until the soft light of early morning filtered into the room that Sarah finally noticed a change. Bella's breathing, once shallow and labored, began to steady. Her heartbeat, which had been weak, found its rhythm again. Though her eyes remained closed, there was a newfound calm in her, a quiet resilience that had returned. Sarah exhaled deeply, releasing a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Bella was going to make it. 2 days went by, and Bella's recovery became a quiet, hopeful rhythm. With each passing hour, her strength returned, and her body slowly began to heal from the taxing ordeal of giving birth. Her puppies, too, were thriving, their tiny squeaks filling the room, adding life to the sterile shelter environment. Then, on the 3rd day, something extraordinary happened. Bella, who had been too weak to even lift her head just days before, rose shakily to her feet. She looked down at her puppies, her tail giving a faint, gentle wag, a sign that she understood they were safe, that they belonged to her. Sarah stood in the doorway, a soft smile spreading across her face. She had witnessed countless tales of resilience in her career, but something about Bella's journey touched her deeply. Bella's strength, her determination to live for her puppies, was nothing short of a miracle. Lucy stepped up beside her, crossing her arms as she watched the scene unfold, awe filling her voice. "I can hardly believe it," she whispered. Sarah nodded, her gaze fixed on Bella. "Neither can I," she replied, "but sometimes animals have a way of surprising us." As the days turned into weeks, Bella blossomed. She was no longer the emaciated, fragile dog who had arrived on the edge of survival. Her coat regained its luster, her eyes sparkled with a newfound vitality, and her bond with her puppies grew stronger with each passing day. One sunny afternoon, Sarah found herself in the shelter's courtyard, watching as Bella played with her puppies in the warm light. The little ones tumbled over each other, their tiny tails wagging furiously as they explored the world for the first time. Bella kept a watchful, loving eye on them, her instincts as a mother fierce and unwavering. A family visiting the shelter with hopes of adopting wandered over to Dr. Sarah Hayes. In an instant, a young girl, no older than 8, gasped in delight as her eyes landed on Bella and her playful puppies. "Mom, Dad, look at the puppies!" she squealed, tugging her parents toward the courtyard. Sarah watched, a warm smile lighting up her face, as the family was drawn in by the sight of Bella's lively brood. The little girl knelt down, reaching out as one of the puppies wobbled over to her, its tiny nose twitching curiously as it sniffed her outstretched hand. She giggled, carefully scooping up the puppy and holding it close, her eyes shining with pure joy. "Are they available for adoption?" her father asked, a softness in his eyes as he watched his daughter cradle the puppy with such tenderness. Sarah nodded, her heart swelling. "Yes, they are. They've been through a lot, but they're finally ready for loving homes." The mother knelt down, gently stroking Bella's head. Bella's tail began to wag, a sign of quiet happiness. "And what about their mother?" she asked, her voice filled with compassion. "She's beautiful." Sarah's face softened with admiration. "She's a fighter. She came so close to leaving us, but she pulled through for her puppies. She's far stronger than any of us ever imagined." The family shared a knowing look, smiles spreading across their faces. The father looked at his daughter, who was utterly smitten with the puppy in her arms. "I think we just found our new family members," he said with a grin, the warmth of love already forming between them. As the family began the adoption process, a warmth blossomed in Dr. Sarah Hayes' chest, a feeling she hadn't experienced in quite some time. Bella had beaten unimaginable odds, not only surviving but thriving, and now she and her precious puppies were finally on their way to the loving homes they deserved. Later that evening, after the family left with 2 of the puppies and a promise to return for Bella once she was ready, Sarah found herself alone in her office, reflecting on the journey that had led them all to this point. She sat in quiet contemplation, remembering the day she'd almost made the fateful decision to end Bella's suffering. How close she had come to extinguishing not just Bella's life, but the lives of the 6 tiny puppies now snuggled safely in loving arms. Her gaze drifted to the small office window, where the warm hues of the setting sun cast a gentle glow over the shelter yard. Out there, Bella was still playing with her remaining puppies, her once frail body now fuller, her coat restored to a healthy shine, her eyes bright with a vitality Sarah had never seen when she first arrived. Leaning back in her chair, Sarah felt her heart swell. Every day in the shelter brought its own set of trials, countless challenges. But moments like this, moments where life triumphed against all odds, made everything worth it. Bella's story would forever remain etched in her memory, a miraculous tale of resilience, of love, and of survival that Sarah would carry with her always. A gentle knock on the door stirred Dr. Sarah Hayes from her thoughts. Her assistant, Lucy, peeked in, her expression radiating the same warmth Sarah felt within. "Hey," Lucy whispered. "I just thought you'd like to know. The puppies are all fed, and Bella's resting with them now." Sarah smiled gratefully. "Thank you, Lucy. I don't know what I'd have done without you these past few weeks." Lucy brushed off the praise with a wave of her hand, though a soft blush spread across her cheeks. "Honestly, I think Bella's the true hero here, the way she fought so fiercely for those puppies." Her voice trailed off, and she shook her head in awe. "It's just amazing." Sarah nodded, her thoughts drifting back to that pivotal moment in the exam room. The moment she had been seconds away from letting Bella go, before she noticed the labor contractions, before she realized those tiny lives were fighting to come into the world. The weight of that memory sent a shiver down her spine. How easily it could have ended so differently. "Do you ever think about what might have happened if we hadn't caught it in time?" Lucy asked, mirroring Sarah's own lingering thoughts. Sarah's gaze drifted to the syringe still resting on the counter, untouched. "Every day," she replied quietly. But there was something in Bella's eyes that made me pause, something that told me to wait, just a little longer. Lucy stepped into the room fully and sat across from Sarah, meeting her gaze. "You did the right thing by listening. Just look at them now. Those puppies have their whole future ahead of them, and Bella has a second chance at life." For a moment, they sat together in silence, letting the weight of all they'd been through settle in. There were days when the world felt unbearably heavy, the suffering endless. But in this quiet, shared moment, Sarah felt a lightness, a peace she hadn't felt in months. Bella's story was a reminder to them both. Even in the darkest of times, hope could still find a way to shine through. The next morning, Dr. Sarah Hayes arrived at the shelter earlier than usual, savoring the crisp morning air after a night of restless, hopeful thoughts. She made her way to Bella's kennel and paused, a gentle smile softening her face. Bella lay peacefully, her puppies nestled close, their tiny bodies curled against her for warmth. Bella lifted her head as Sarah entered, and their eyes met, gentle brown to gentle brown. For the first time since her arrival, Bella's tail moved in a slow, steady wag, a small but unmistakable gesture of trust and contentment. "You've come so far, haven't you, sweet girl?" Sarah murmured, kneeling beside the kennel. She reached through the bars, her fingers stroking Bella's softening fur, which was beginning to show signs of new life and strength. "I'm so proud of you." The puppies stirred, their tiny paws twitching as they snuggled even closer to their mother. One, the runt of the litter with adorable patches of black and white, rolled over, exposing his little belly. Sarah chuckled at the sight. This little one had been especially fragile, struggling to nurse and keep pace with his more robust siblings. Yet Bella, with the quiet resilience that had carried her through, had made sure every one of her pups received the love and care they needed. Bella leaned down, giving the runt a gentle lick on his head, then rested her chin on her paws, her gaze still fixed on Sarah. No words were needed. The bond between them spoke louder than any language could. Sarah felt the warmth of Bella's gratitude filling the space, a silent acknowledgement of the journey they had taken together and the trust they now shared. In that quiet morning moment, with her family safe and close, Bella had finally found peace. The day passed in a familiar blur for Dr. Sarah Hayes. She tended to the animals, administered medications, and greeted the occasional visitor hoping to adopt. But amidst the routine, her thoughts continually returned to Bella and her puppies. The miraculous turnaround for this small family filled her heart with quiet awe, and each time she checked in on them, her spirits lifted just a bit more. By the end of the day, a sense of peace settled over her. The shelter had been bustling, yet free of emergencies or heartbreak. As she prepared to head home, she felt reassured. Bella and her pups had made it through the worst. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting shades of pink and gold across the sky, an unexpected visitor arrived. Sarah was wrapping up some paperwork when she heard footsteps approaching the front desk. She looked up to see a tall man in his early 40s standing there, his face softened by a warm but hesitant smile. His clothes were worn, and he had the rugged appearance of someone accustomed to the outdoors. "Can I help you?" Sarah asked, stepping over to greet him. The man glanced around, his gaze settling briefly on a few of the dogs resting in their kennels before returning to Sarah. "I heard about a dog you have here? A pregnant one that just gave birth?" Sarah's heart skipped a beat. Bella's story had spread quickly, and it wasn't unusual for people to come by after hearing about an especially heartwarming case. But something in this man's eyes, an intensity, a quiet longing, set him apart. She felt a pang of curiosity, sensing that there was more to his visit. "We do," she replied, watching him closely. "She and her puppies are doing well now, though they're not quite ready for adoption yet." The man nodded, seeming to gather his thoughts as he pressed his lips together, his gaze briefly dropping. Then after a moment, he looked up, a hint of vulnerability crossing his face. I think that dog might be mine," he said softly, his voice filled with quiet hope. Sarah's brow knitted in surprise and confusion. "Yours?" she asked, her voice tentative. The man's gaze dropped to the floor, his shoulders heavy with emotion. "Her name's Bella. I lost her a few months ago. She ran off and I searched everywhere, but I couldn't find her. I never stopped looking, but I didn't think I'd ever see her again." His words trembled, and Sarah felt a wave of disbelief ripple through her. Could it really be true? Could Bella, the resilient dog she'd fought so hard for, have belonged to him all along? "Are you certain it's her?" Sarah asked carefully, her heart cautious yet hopeful. "She was in a terrible state when she arrived here." The man nodded, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm sure. Bella meant everything to me. When she vanished, I didn't know what to do, but I never stopped hoping. I never stopped looking." As Sarah listened, her heart softened with empathy. She had encountered far too many cases where animals were discarded and forgotten by careless owners. But this man, his grief was raw, as though he had lost a cherished family member. His sorrow felt genuine, his search tireless. "I can take you to see her," Sarah offered softly, her tone filled with understanding. The man looked up, and in his eyes was a glimmer of hope she hadn't seen before. "Please," he whispered, I need to know." Sarah guided the man down the quiet hallway toward the kennels, her mind whirling with a mix of hope and caution. If what he said was true, it meant that Bella had a home waiting for her, a place of love and familiarity. But Sarah was cautious. Bella had endured so much already, and she wouldn't release her without being absolutely sure. They arrived at Bella's kennel, and Sarah paused a few feet away, allowing the man a moment alone with her. Bella lay curled up, her puppies nestled close, a peaceful image of the little family she had fought so hard to keep together. But the instant the man stepped forward, something extraordinary happened. Bella's ears perked up, her head lifting as she stared, wide-eyed, at the familiar figure before her. She let out a soft, quivering whimper, her body tensing as she took in his scent, her memory stirring with recognition. The man knelt in front of the kennel, his eyes shimmering with unshed tears, "Bella," he whispered, his voice breaking. Hearing her name, Bella pushed herself up, her tail wagging in wild, joyous abandon. She moved as close as she could, pressing her nose through the bars, her gaze locked intently on the man she had missed so deeply. "It's you," he managed, his voice choked with emotion as he reached a hand through the bars to touch her. Bella licked his hand, her entire body trembling with excitement and relief. It was undeniable. This wasn't just any visitor. This was her person, her family, and they were together once more. As Sarah watched the reunion unfold before her, tears welled in her eyes, spilling over as she witnessed the undeniable bond between Bella and her long-lost owner. Any remaining doubts melted away. Bella had indeed found her way back to the person who loved her most. The man turned toward Sarah, his own face damp with tears. I don't know how to thank you. I thought I'd lost her forever." A warm smile softened Sarah's expression. "There's no need to thank me," she replied, her voice filled with admiration. "Bella's been through so much, but she's a fighter. She held on for her puppies. And for you." In the end, Bella's story was one of undying hope, resilience, and love. Not only had she survived when the odds were stacked against her, but she had also been reunited with the one person who had never given up on her. Now, with her 6 healthy puppies beside her, Bella finally had the future she had always deserved, a life filled with love and belonging. As Bella settled back into her kennel, her 6 tiny puppies curled up by her side, the scene felt like a miracle Sarah knew she would carry in her heart forever. In a shelter that had seen so much sadness and struggle, this moment of pure, undeniable joy reminded her of the reason she came to work each day. Bella's journey was a testament to the resilience of animals and the extraordinary lengths they go to for love and survival. Against all odds, Bella had been saved, not merely by fate, but by the compassion of those who had crossed her path. Sarah, the veterinarian who saw something precious in Bella when it mattered most, and the man who had never stopped searching for his cherished dog. For Bella, this was not an ending, but the beginning of a new chapter, one where she would be cared for, loved, and finally at peace. Her puppies too would grow strong, each one carrying a piece of her strength and spirit, destined to find loving homes of their own. As Sarah watched Bella and her owner walk out of the shelter together, a deep sense of peace washed over her. In a world often overshadowed by hardship and uncertainty, moments like this, of hope, of healing, of heartwarming reunions, served as gentle reminders of why she dedicated herself to this work every single day. She felt her purpose reaffirmed, knowing she had been part of something that transcended the usual challenges of her profession. As the shelter doors closed behind them, Sarah allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. Some endings, she knew, were merely the beginning of something far more beautiful, a new chapter of love, safety, and happiness for Bella and her family. Thank you for watching this journey unfold. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. We release heartfelt stories like this every day, so stay tuned for more. And don't forget to share your thoughts and reflections in the comments below. Take care, and we'll see you in the next video.